And from what I see, I wish I had a good man like Papoose. Remy Ma now want Papoose back, and he done moved in with his new girlfriend. Now she gotta play the hand that she picked. That man waited for her.
He waited there, as if she were trapped somewhere with no way out. The streets of New York were as busy and chaotic as always. Honking cars, hurried pedestrians, and life rushing by at full speed. But beneath the surface, something was brewing, ready to erupt. It seemed like just another ordinary day. Yet, for Remy Ma, it marked the beginning of a storm that would rock her world. Remy Ma was a powerhouse in the rap scene, strong, self-reliant, and relentless. She had earned her reputation through hard work and perseverance. However, on this day, none of that would shield her from the consequences of one impulsive choice. Recently, she had entered a new relationship, one that initially seemed like a dream come true. Her girlfriend Vanessa embodied everything Remy had been longing for: confident, stunning, and vibrant. In the beginning, it seemed flawless. They were inseparable, soaring on love and passion. But as time often reveals, the magic began to fade. Small disagreements became louder, evolving into full-blown arguments, especially for someone like Remy, who had spent her life fighting for respect and proving her worth. This felt like a battle she never anticipated, a storm she wasn't prepared to face, and it was only the start. Remy found herself in a battle she didn't know how to navigate, struggling to balance love with control. Vanessa wasn't one to remain silent. She pushed back when necessary, keeping the tension alive between them. The confrontation that changed everything began innocently enough. It might have been a simple misunderstanding, or perhaps just too much to drink. Initially, it seemed like just another disagreement, but for Remy, it struck deeper. Stress, jealousy, and old wounds she thought she'd buried resurfaced all at once. Before either could stop it, things spiraled into something darker. The anger overtook her, clouding her judgment. The same hands that once wrote lyrics that inspired and held microphones to electrify crowds betrayed her in an instant, a moment she could never undo. Remy's hands wrapped around Vanessa's throat, a brief moment of rage that would leave a mark neither could ignore. Her chest heaved with fury, and her mind swirled in a fog of emotions she couldn't process. The room felt tight and stifling, the walls pressing in on her as if closing in. She had always prided herself on staying in control, on being the one who could navigate life's challenges with calm precision. But tonight, that no longer mattered. Tonight, her carefully built armor had shattered, exposing the raw, uncontrollable rage that had been brewing inside her for years. With a swift movement, Remy shoved Vanessa against the wall. The impact was harsh, the sound of Vanessa's body slamming into the drywall reverberating through the room. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Remy stood there, her hands still extended, her chest rising and falling with the intensity of her breath. But in that moment, nothing mattered except the anger, the fury, the frustration that had been building beneath the surface for so long, a storm that had finally erupted. Vanessa gasped, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Remy's stare was cold and unflinching, as though she were looking past Vanessa, not at her. The words hit like a punch, and for a split second, confusion flashed across Vanessa's eyes. She couldn't understand. She didn't know what Remy meant. All she knew was that she had never seen her like this, never witnessed her so entirely overtaken by rage, so distant from the woman she thought she knew. Vanessa's heart pounded as she tried to make sense of it all, to reach Remy, to break through the wall of anger that surrounded her. But it felt like trying to reach someone trapped in the heart of a storm. This wasn't their first fight, but it was the first time Remy had lost control like this, and Vanessa could feel it. The air was thick with tension, a dangerous, suffocating energy that enveloped them both. "You're not ready for this," Remy snarled, her voice sharp and frigid. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a plea for understanding. It was pure, unfiltered rage. She wasn't thinking anymore. There was no effort to make sense of the situation or find a way to fix it. She was simply reacting, emotions running unchecked. And Vanessa, standing there, vulnerable and terrified, was caught in the storm. "Sometimes," Remy went on, her voice growing darker and more threatening, "people need to understand what's real. Then, the fear gripped Vanessa. Her body shook uncontrollably as she realized just how dangerous this moment had become. She was trapped, powerless against the intensity of Remy's fury. Desperation coursed through her as she fought to free herself from Remy's unyielding grasp. But it was pointless. Remy's strength was too much, and all Vanessa could do was struggle, her movements growing more frantic by the second. When Remy finally let go, the weight of the situation pressed down on Vanessa, crushing her spirit. Then, the scream erupted from her, a sound that wasn't just a cry, but a soul-shattering, heart-wrenching wail. It was the kind of sound that tore through the air, the sound of someone who never imagined they'd be in this situation, someone whose world had just shattered beyond recognition. Remy's chest constricted, her breath caught in her throat as Vanessa's scream sliced through her like a sharp blade. It was the cry of someone in agony, someone terrified for their life. In that instant, Remy's anger wavered. A sudden clarity hit her hard, a rush of realization that crashed into her, like a freight train. What had she done? What had she become? Her mind spun as the gravity of the situation sank in. She wasn't thinking anymore. She had crossed a line, one that couldn't be undone, and the consequences were already unfolding before her. Vanessa gasped for air, stumbling backward as she clutched her throat. The panic in her eyes was unmistakable, her hands shaking as she tried to regain control of herself. The words Remy had spoken hit her like a physical blow, stealing the breath from her chest. She froze, the weight of them reverberating in her mind, cutting through the fog of rage that had clouded her thoughts moments before. Her body felt disconnected, as though she had stepped outside herself and was watching the scene from a distance. Vanessa remained pressed against the wall, her body trembling, her breath erratic. The terror in her eyes was something Remy had never seen before, at least never directed at her. It was the kind of look she associated with victims, with people trapped in situations beyond their control. A wave of nausea washed over her as the moment replayed in her mind, over and over. The shove, the impact, Vanessa gasping for air, the way she had looked at Remy. Not with love, not with understanding, but with raw, paralyzing fear. Her hands, the same hands that had once crafted powerful, passionate lyrics, had betrayed her. The hands that had held Vanessa in moments of love and tenderness had now left a scar that could never be erased. She had worked so hard to build an untouchable, invincible persona, a force of nature in the music world, a woman who had fought her way to the top, overcoming every challenge thrown her way. Suddenly, Vanessa moved, pulling Remy back to the present. Her hands trembled as she fumbled for her phone, nearly dropping it in her panic. A sharp, broken sob escaped her as she punched in the numbers. Remy opened her mouth, desperate to say something, to stop what was about to unfold, to undo everything, to make Vanessa understand that she wasn't this person, that this wasn't who she truly was. But the words stuck in her throat, refusing to come out. The sirens arrived quicker than Remy anticipated, their wail cutting through the air, shattering the fragile silence that had settled between them. Red and blue lights flashed, painting the walls in harsh, unforgiving streaks. The reality of what was happening sank in, heavy and suffocating, pressing down on Remy's chest. Vanessa flinched but quickly moved, pulling the door open with trembling hands. The officers rushed in, their presence filling the small apartment with an authority that Remy couldn't resist. She barely heard their words. She barely felt the cold metal of the handcuffs as they clicked around her wrists. The sting of them sent a sharp shock of reality through her. She had worn chains before, but never like this. Never with this finality, with this inescapable sense of consequence. As she was shoved into the back of the squad car, Remy caught one last look at Vanessa. Standing in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, her body still shaking. But it was her face that hit Remy the hardest. Remy lowered her head, her eyes squeezed shut as the car pulled away. Everything she had built, her empire, her legacy, the love she had found, had crumbled in an instant, all because of a single moment of rage.